Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the CryptoCannaVerse, and a globally inclusive podcast that serves a hub of visionary entrepreneurs operating at the intersection of four key domains: Christ, crypto, cannabis, and CPAs. We help grow, educate, and inspire within these four C's, and we also connect founders with investors, advisors, and partnerships. Hosted by Crystal Wampler and Alan Lau. And our guest co-host today is Bill Decker, Board of Advisors at Next Chain Ventures, former Layer 1 blockchain CMO, and 10-time entrepreneur. Welcome, Bill.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here. Bill, can you take a few minutes to tell us a little bit about how you help founders?
Sure, but I was thinking of doing a couple of songs first and maybe a sonnet, just to get things going. And
Absolutely.
Or maybe we should take a minute for that joke that just died and just, mourn the joke. Well, I've been there and done it. So I've been a founder many times, led a couple of companies to 10x exits, made every mistake you can possibly make. A true founder is an all-purpose infielder. They really have to do a lot of different things. My strength happens to be marketing, sales, and strategy, as opposed to where a lot of founders are coming from in our space, which is tech. So probably one of the things I really bring is that marketing, sales, strategy side. And you'll see my questions today. A lot of how are you going to sell this? Who's going to buy it? Why would they buy it? As opposed to how good the tech is, which I always see as secondary. So that's my background and that's my bend. I'm also a refugee from New York City and grew up in the tough streets of Hell's Kitchen and made it in happy Denver, Colorado, where people smile. I mean,
Thank you so much for sharing that about yourself, Bill. We always are so thankful for you joining us and providing your expertise. We are booked with speakers through April 2024, but if you would like to be a speaker on the show, please reach out to crystal@connethics.com. And please note, we are not advising you to invest in any of the deals that are on our show. Please do your due diligence. Today's show is being broadcast live across multiple social media platforms, including Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, and we have a total following of 10,000. Our strategic network includes venture capital firms, family offices, blockchain and crypto hedge funds, business owners, Web3 launchpads, and CPAs and attorneys serving ultra high net worth clientele. We also have angel investors and investors. I am super excited to introduce our guest co-host, or our guest speaker today, Mr. Stephen Pointer. Stephen, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
The CryptoCannaVerse presents speaker Stephen Pointer, founder of Kosmos, today, Friday, November 17th, 2023. Stephen is deliberate in his pursuit to empower creative endeavors with sustainable business success, acting, film production, creative writing, marketing, and financial planning and research from the cornerstones of Stephen's expertise. Stephen has owned his own marketing agency, producing creatives and managing six-figure campaigns on social media platforms such as YouTube and Facebook. His time in the wealth management field as an investment advisor representative honed his financial and business skill sets. Web3 has been a natural fit for Stephen, with his intersection of community cultivation, content marketing, and relationship building. Through his first venture, Sitka World, co-founder Stephen brought creative storytelling to the blockchain and sourced all the ingredients required to take the idea to the next level. Stephen knew he needed to bring better tools to launch the Sitka IP, so he created Kosmos, which is now his flagship business, a self-publishing tool for creators to fully immerse readers in unique story worlds. The platform has been backed by an incubator with a billionaire chairman and other high-profile, real business-based advisors and flagship partners. He is not mucking around. He works to free creatives to claim their business success.
He's not mucking.
No mucking here.
Mucking. What the muck? Okay, there's jokes here somewhere. Steven, give us the 90 seconds. What do you do?
Yeah. So with Cosmos specifically, or
Yes,
just my
that's what
general
we're going to talk
background?
about. Or
Okay.
unless you want to talk about the bird watching hobby you have. No, I think we're
No,
talking about.
okay, we'll talk about Cosmos. Basically, it is, yes, a self-publishing digital platform. And the goal is to allow creatives to share stories while they retain full control and ownership of it and full customization of it. So there's a lot of ways to share stories online, right? I mean, you have things like Wattpad and Radish, or apps, or Substack, or people can form communities on Patreon, right? Or Discord and such. And a lot of authors experiment with these platforms, and there's several million self-publishing authors each year, right? But we couldn't find anything that made sense for the story we were sharing. So my wife, she's a full-time author. I've dabbled in writing. I have a draft of a novel that will need a lot more work before it sees the light of the day. But I've also published a book on freelance pricing models and such, and pretty familiar with the industry. And we couldn't find, though, anything that really made sense for this story that my wife has been working on for like 10 years, a fantasy trilogy. Her heart and soul is in it. And she's like, I want something that allows me to monetize it. Some of the platforms don't, or it's not in your control how much to charge. She's like, I want something that allows me to build community, right? It should be fun. It should be something where I'm getting feedback from readers and able to sell more than just a book, but have subscriptions or have merchandise and other stuff. And I want something that's really creative and feels authentic to my story world. And especially that last point, the idea of having something authentic to the story world is something that I really ran with the idea of in Web3, and seeing, well, what if instead of just black text and white background cookie cutter sort of UIs, which is what the rest of Web2 pretty much offers if you want to publish a book, we thought, well, what if we could do something where it's more like a drag and drop, almost website builder, but still very easy and effortless, right? But if you have custom backgrounds, ambient music, custom fonts and colors and everything, multimedia content if you want, as well as the social elements, so that you can really make what you want of it and sort of immerse your readers into your story world more.
Okay, so let's go on to this differentiator, because there's a whole bunch of publishing platforms out there, right? I mean,
Sure.
I'm from a little company called Apple, and of
Yeah.
course, Apple got one. So you're hanging on to this differentiator. What is that exactly? What do you mean besides the interface, or you talk about community, for example?
Yeah, I would say that the two main differentiators are customization and control. So customization is what I was talking about with the UI itself being more customizable, right? And as well as even customizable user journeys. So seeing, because to me, the value of story at the end of the day, like, why do we do storytelling? It's pretty much humanity's oldest art form, right? Sitting around at the campfire telling oral stories. And now we have, look at some of the largest industries in the world, films and gaming and books and even theme parks and stuff like that are a form of experiential storytelling. So people love it, but why do we do it? Ultimately, it's about sort of this vicarious experience, right? It's a sense of belonging, sense of meaning. A lot of people can almost even have senses of transcendence and stuff through storytelling. And the power of that is in the immersion of it. And so we were thinking, how can we bring more immersiveness to it? So that's with the UI and the gamification. So the author creator can customize not just the visual aspects, but like, how is someone going through their story? Is it all at once, like a book? Or is it sequential, where it's a new chapter unlocked each day? Or is it like Patreon, where you can have fans and just exclusive content for people that subscribe, or like an email newsletter? Or do you combine some of all of that into an ecosystem where you have sort of different levels of access and ways of monetizing? And all of that is going to be fully customizable as well. And we don't want just a cookie cutter, like, this is the way that you run your business. It's about, how do we empower people to customize it for their needs, for people that are serious about using their writing to build a following and grow a business.
Will the
So
customization actually interfere with the author's main work? Is it maybe giving them too much? They're saying, wait, there's too many tools here. I just want to, write a book and get it published. Or is
fair.
it an easy version for, novice authors like me?
Fair. Yes, our goal will be to make it as easy as possible. So, I mean, if someone wants to publish a normal, say like normal book in terms of not dealing with timed unlocks or subscriptions and they just say, here's a book, it's $15, black and white text, like you can do that, right? It's not like you're gonna have to become some sort of, graphic artist and, put in a ton of work. You can if you want. So yeah, the default options, it'll still be easy and simple, but
Okay.
we are going
Up
to
the
use
staircase.
AI. Oh, pardon?
Moving up the staircase in terms of features, right? I can start with almost none and move up.
Yeah, exactly. But the power of AI, and we've given a lot of thought, and we have some AI consultants in our team and advisor base to help us with all this, is like, how do we use AI to just make things more effortless? To me, AI isn't about replacing human creativity, right? Like there's always going to be value that you can only get from the lived human experience. And that's what storytelling is sharing that experience, right? But how can we use AI to just make it more efficient, right? And so for things like if you want custom backgrounds or ambient music, and really those multimedia sort of assets, that's where AI will be very valuable in being able to make that faster, right? So the long-term goal, this won't all be an MVP, right? So I don't want to be over-promising, but what we are working towards is that you could just upload the manuscript and then AI would look at the manuscript and understand, okay, what's the context, what's the story world, what's the mood, and who are the main characters and stuff like that, and be able to create assets for you. And you just basically approve or tweak them, so that it's not like, we don't want a huge barrier to entry, right, for people to be able to do that. Yeah.
We at the stage yet where I can take one of my books, and for those of you out there in viewer land, I've written 11 of them. You haven't read any of them because they're all bad. My own mother hasn't read them. They make great paperweights though for Christmas holiday time. Some of them actually don't have any words in them. I just hold the book up. But can I take one of my books, put it up on your site, and write another one in my voice? Is AI there yet? Like, here's my book. I wrote it called Marketing Street Fighter. I want version 2. Here's the manuscript. Write a sequel. Are we there yet? Because we know we're getting there.
Yeah. That sort of functionality is not something that we've envisioned for Cosmos. It could be long term. I'm not going to rule things out. But yeah, I do want to be clear. Cosmos is about publishing, not writing, right? So this isn't so much about helping with the ideation or the writing process or generating new content. It's, you have a story that you want to share with the world. This is just a way to share that, to monetize it, to build your audience.
Got it. So if I have, if I'm using your Cosmos with my story, can I then distribute it to all the various e-tailers out there? Can I get it on Apple? Can I get it on Amazon? Can I get it on all those other sources?
Yeah, I mean, we don't have any rights, like we aren't claiming any rights or exclusivity in terms of publishing, right? So whoever is sharing it, you still retain that rights and you can do whatever you want with it. Having integrations with other things is something that's on my horizon long term, but it won't be, at MVP. But yeah, it certainly would be great to be able to click some buttons and have it distributed to other platforms as well. Or one thing I'm really keen to explore would be print on demand, and having that be incorporated, where you could even get maybe print versions with the cool backgrounds and stuff that you have to have more of a picture book or something. But that all adds a lot of complexity, and it'll be farther down the road from where we are now.
Before we get into questions about the market and selling and how do you get authors, anyone out there have any questions on the product? Okay.
So I have one actually. So when we're talking about multimedia in production of stories and books, obviously when you go print on demand and you have a physical book, you're sort of limited to multimedia. It's really photos. It sort of excludes MP4s and stuff. But through Cosmos natively, when you're launching a publishing thing that's just for Cosmos, you're not going to go launch it on Amazon direct publishing or make a physical book. So if I'm understanding correctly, you could use AI to make sort of MP4s of your characters to have different like web creatives with each page, so that you're reading it, but you're also like visually experiencing the story at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
To an extent, I think if I understand correctly, you're asking, is it almost like you can watch the story unfold as well as reading it? So long term, I also would love to explore that idea of like actually like animated graphics of like a cartoon or something almost, and you could like watch it with subtitles or something. But that's not the base model idea. The base model idea is just imagine custom backgrounds, and they could be animated backgrounds with like I'm imagining there's actually a YouTube channel, if anyone wants to look it up, it's called Ambient Worlds, is one of the inspirations for this originally, because I like to study to it sometimes. They have like Harry Potter, Narnia, Lord of the Rings, cool places, right? And say it's in a forest, there might be birds chirping and there'd be a waterfall in the background, sunlight coming through the trees, rustling of leaves. Like there's a little bit of emotion and it feels like you're there, but it's not distracting because you're reading, like in the Cosmos app, there's words layered over it. So the reading is still the main experience, and the main thing that's filling the screen is the text, right? But it's instead of just white background, black text, or vice versa, it is to feel like you're immersed and sucked into that story world.
We have a question from Amanda. Your mic is off.
I got it. Yep. Okay.
Just before you ask this question, I want to point out that before we went on the air, folks, Amanda was complaining about how her hair looked on camera to a bald guy. Okay.
Anyway, I think your hair looks great now. So if I'm getting ahead of myself, you could stop me. But when an author's making an account, is this a subscription? Are they paying you as they sell books, or people sign up and that's how you make money? How does this work?
A bit of both. So it'll be free to get started, right? Because we don't want any barriers to adoption, right? So people can get started for free, and then it's basically a rev share for content that they sell. They can have free stories as well, but if they have paid content, whether that's paying up front or paying per month or per chapter, then there'd be a portion split with Cosmos. We're looking at 50-50 as probably the base tier for free. But then if authors want, there'll be paid options as well. So if they go pro, basically, or premium, they would get some additional features and premium support, but they'd also be able to retain a higher percentage. We're looking at up to 80% is what we'd like to get, right? Because a lot of these other platforms, you get like paid pennies on the dollar. I mean, it depends, right? But it's the same in so many things, like streaming for Spotify, right? Or books on Amazon. Like unless you go exclusive with them, you only get like 35%. Audiobooks are even worse. Oftentimes the author only gets 10 to 20%. And some of the other apps, like we're like 50-50, but part of our whole proposition too is being like, okay, authors, if you want to build a business, you need to be able to price it the way you want and retain the majority of the value that you're creating, and giving them some options. And it's part of our club.
So let's move on to the marketing, because you have two audiences clearly that you're marketing to. One is this idea of people who are creating content, and the other is people like me who might buy it. So how are you handling this? Let's take the authors first. How do you get them? How do you get them to know about you, learn about you?
Yeah.
He comes to us, Bill.
That's true.
This is part of it, right? So just general awareness. I mean, right now we're still in the early development stage. We are looking at doing an NFT launch when we go live, which will give utility to authors and people that want to use the platform. So it's partly through just building up. I mean, we have a Discord already with several hundred people, many of whom are writers and are already working on stories that they want to publish on Cosmos. But we're also going to be approaching like KOLs, key leaders, influencers that have books, authors that have a sizable following. Our goal will be to get at least one or a few people to basically attach their names that want to use it, that see the potential, and that have a really sizable following. So that would sort of jumpstart the adoption and awareness instead of just having to, grow one by one from the ground up. So
will you pay those authors?
Pardon?
I had a meeting with a guy, right? He does records. His name is Snoop Dogg.
Oh, yeah.
Was representing an NFT marketplace. And I said, how do I get you to put your album on my NFT marketplace? Because his last two albums were NFTs. And he said, it's very simple. You start with $5 million. Because he knows he's going to drive traffic to us. He knows, right? So how do you get these authors? You have to give them something that they're not getting somewhere else. And it might be money, or it might be an audience, which takes us to the other side of the marketing, right? I mean, I could probably go after someone and say, look, I've got 5 million people looking at my site. Would you like to be a flagship player there? So let's go on to marketing side two, getting users, getting the crystals of the world to come and buy a book.
Yeah. Well, my theory on that is simple, that the best way to get good readers and a lot of readers is to get good stories and a lot of stories, right? And so the marketing will be more focused on bringing on the authors. right? And maybe it's a celebrity that needs a lot of money, and then we can fundraise for that as part of our investment round and such. But it's also, maybe it's some of the top authors on the competing platforms, right? So we plan to, it's a little hard because sometimes for a lot of those people, they're going to want to see a working product before they necessarily attach their name. So right now, since it's still, we have prototypes that we can show, but we don't have the actual product live yet, right? So we're going to do this more heavy once we have the product live, where so we can actually show people, right? But going to the top writers on Wattpad, going to the top writers on Substack and Radish, and those people that would have relevant stories and audiences, and being like, hey, if you want, you can try sharing a story here. It's free. We'll help you get started. It'll be easy, like nothing to lose. Try it out, see if you like it, right? And then as some of those people try it out and like it, then they bring over the readers, and the readers are like, oh, this is actually really cool. So the main way is through bringing on writers, but also through reader referrals, because also one of my theories, which I don't think is that revolutionary, is that most people read a book because a friend recommended it to them, right? Or a coworker, right? I mean, I know probably the last 5 books that I read were all because other people were telling me, hey, you need to read this. So, so we're going to incentivize referrals within the Kosmos ecosystem natively, and partly even just with the structure of stories. So there will be a way to publish where you have stories that unlock a new chapter with timed unlocks, right? But people will be able to accelerate that, basically reading faster by referring friends. So every friend they refer to that story, they'll be able to then unlock chapters more quickly. And basing that on referring to individual stories, not the platform. I mean, there will be ways, we'll probably have some sort of affiliate system and stuff for the platform as a whole at some point, but right, like people are more interested in individual story than the Kosmos platform as an entity, right? So it's about bringing people into good stories and letting them easily share those stories with each other. And as the story readership grows, that means then everyone in Kosmos benefits. So
if this were my business, I'm going to be really controversial here, right?
Yeah, please do.
And I'm looking to the panel to knock down my idea. If this were my business, I would never talk to an author, and I would never talk to a reader. I would never do it. I would go to someone who has established needs that is not your traditional author. For example, I might go to the marketing department at Oracle and say, this is your platform. You can write better brochures, better stories, better corporate communications. We have the AI, we have the graphics, we have the music. You guys are sending out information to 300,000 people every 2 days. That's one deal with one person, as opposed to going and cherry picking these authors who, by the way, think they're gods because they have, 250,000 books sold. KOLs, those are great, but they charge. So knock down that idea, guys. Let me throw it at like, Crystal or Clayton or Jacob. Tell me why my idea is just stupid. Come on.
Actually, it's a great idea, but I mean, that could be something that he could do on the side, but his passion is for, authors and bringing the books to life. Is that right, Stephen?
Yeah, I think, Bill, it's a good idea to approach corporations. But yeah, I wouldn't see it as an either or, but a both. And I think that, yeah, all communication is storytelling at the end of the day. Good communication. I mean, it's what powers look at politics and world history events and religion and nonprofits and stuff like that. It's all some sort of shared identity and story they're telling. And I think that a lot of those groups and companies could use a platform like Kosmos, right, to engage their readers. It would be a lot more fun and engaging than just, say, a newsletter, right, which a lot of these people are doing. So that's definitely a thing that I think we can grow into. But yeah, in terms of passion and root idea, like I certainly want to see this as a way to help people connect with stories that we maybe typically think of stories, right? Like books, novels, and poetry and stuff like that. And I'm definitely passionate about that and seeing that be a good platform for authors and helping authors that, I mean, in terms of their base need, a lot of authors, the biggest issue is, well, A, they aren't making enough money from it or any money from it, or B, they're having trouble finding readers, right? And we can't magically solve those problems for them in terms of, at the end of the day, you need a good story. If the story sucks, it's not going to do well. And you need some business knowledge, and you need to grow your own audience and have your own email list and stuff like that, right? So we can't do that for them, but what we can do is we can help support them with a way of sharing that gives them more tools and more flexibility and more control in that, and giving them a story worth talking about. Like, at least this story experience worth talking about, right? Where fans are like, wow, this is just more interesting, more immersive, more fun, more gamified than other ways that I've read stories. And I'm going to tell my friends about it, right? Because it's new and unique and interesting, and that can help their story grow. So, and that's something that no one else is really providing to that audience. So yeah, anyways, long story short, Bill, yeah, it's more a matter of the origin of why we're doing this. I think, yeah, if you were to just say, well, let's look at the money and get the most users in one day, then yeah, signing on some companies would be a good way to do that. So
I would also push back on the passion. I mean, I work in marketing in corporations, and people who create a marketing brief are as passionate as an author. And they have pressure on them. They work hours and hours. There's often teams of people putting these things together. And they have a built-in audience waiting for it. And it might be an easier way to charge. It might be so much smarter to go to an Oracle and say, give us 10,000 a month, use this as much as you want. We're not counting books. We're not keeping records. We're not doing that. Here's the switch. It's a nice SaaS model. We flip off the switch if you don't pay the bill. And then, there's lots and lots of these corporations. Churches, great example, right? Built-in audience, very, very passionate about what they're writing. They're not traditional authors. So I love to push that way, because I think your biggest stumbling block here is going to be the cost of getting me to go to your platform and buy something.
But you do have backers and partnerships. So I'm kind of curious, what was it that they saw in the company that made them want to be like, oh yeah, I want to invest in this?
yeah, so the current partners that I may have mentioned before, flagship partners. So that includes Web3 brands. So like Neo Tokyo is one, This Thing of Ours, Worlds Beyond, Little Lemon Friends. Yeah, so a few that Snuggle Buddies is one. They're doing like these cool children's stories and in real life physical merchandise and such. So we have 12 flagship partners that have all come on board, and they're saying, okay, when Kosmos goes live, we're going to share stories with it. Now they all have communities, and they all have either some existing lore or they're working on lore. And Web3 is a natural fit for this sort of thing, right? Because it allows for gamification of the user journey and tracking it in a decentralized way, right? So if, say, Neo Tokyo, they have lore that they publish, and then that they can have these, there will be basically soul-bound NFTs, kind of like POAPs, that you can earn when you reach certain milestones, if you're engaging by like commenting or giving feedback, if you're referring friends to this story, right? They'll be able to basically customize these badges that their community members can then earn. And then those records are on chain, right? So if they want to give people, I don't know, a Discord role, if they have a certain badge, or access to new exclusive content, or even if they wanted to airdrop tokens or whatever they want to do, or if they have a game, maybe those players get some new exclusive skin or weapon in the game because of what they did on the Cosmos platform, or vice versa. And that's really one of the main draws of Web3 for us, and why we're building on Web3 is to allow those sorts of cross-media both within one ecosystem applications or partnerships, right? You could say, okay, our partner game or whatever is publishing their lore, and people that, read that story there also get something in our ecosystem. So that's what fascinates me. And in terms of why they came on and what they saw in it, it was largely the full immersion and gamification of that, as well as the full ownership and customization, right? Because that's, if you're a serious brand or a serious author at that point, it's one of the biggest reasons why you often aren't publishing on something like Wattpad, because that whole user UI is focused on Wattpad. It's their logo, their colors, their branding, their URL, all that. Whereas the idea is that, Neo Tokyo can make that experience their own. When they direct their fans to read the story, they'll be able to have a custom URL, and the branding and everything will be Neo Tokyo, right? It'll still be part of the Cosmos ecosystem. You'll be able to see other stories or go to the Cosmos homepage from it, but the main focus when you're brought in is their story world. And that's, I think, essential, for brands and corporations, because they value that.
But walk us through this partnership. Let's take Neo Tokyo. How does that work? Who pays who? How does the money come? How does this all monetized? What does that look like? Because partner is always a very, very nebulous term.
Yeah.
I'm
Well,
a Krista's partner, and she hasn't given me a dime. I mean, there's a great example, you know.
well, it sounds like Crystal's using the same method we are right now, which is free. So we aren't the 12 partners that came on, they signed on like 3 months ago before it even started development, right? And our agreement with them is to give them free access in exchange for them bringing their communities to using it, right? So that's really just for the publicity and proof of concept and such. But going forward, that offer is no longer open, right? So we'll have organizational rates, or there'll be a monthly subscription. We'll probably base it somewhat on community size. The pricing for that is the pricing model isn't determined yet, but it'll be at least several hundred to several $1,000s a month for the organization to basically be using that.
So if they bring a community, so Neo Tokyo brings this community, and then someone sells a story, someone sells a book, how does the money work? Who holds the pen? Do you get a piece of that?
Yeah, so that will be what I mentioned before of basically a rev share. So the author retains the portion and Kosmos retains the portion. The Kosmos or the author portion would be between roughly 50 and 80%, depending on whether they're a paid member or not, right? And we'll be using an in-app credit system. This won't be like a crypto token. It'll just be like some of the competing story apps or some games have, right? A in-game sort of currency. And people will be able to, a reader can buy credits, just load up their account, and then they redeem the credits to unlock paid content, right? And then the end of each month, it'll just be a calculation of how much, what's the value per credit based on how much came in and how much came out. And then you pay out authors proportionally to how many credits they sold worth of content.
Now, if I take this book that I've written and put it up on your site on Kosmos, the beauty of the blockchain here is that if I put it on another site, you can still track the sale. Is that the idea? Or if I produce this book and then say, fine, now I'm putting it up at my own site, completely divorced from Kosmos, can blockchain track that so you still get your royalty?
I mean, that would depend on how they publish it, right? I mean, there's nothing stopping. We aren't controlling any rights to this story. So someone could, if they want, they can put their book on Amazon and we aren't getting a royalty from what they sell on Amazon, right? So we aren't trying to collect royalties or anything if they're selling it on their own website or on other things. So the advantage of Kosmos is that it's the experience, right? So if they put their book up elsewhere, it's not going to have the backgrounds or the comments or the badges or that whole ecosystem built around it. It's just the text.
So more questions from the panel before we talk about money?
I have a question. So I liked Bill's idea of, heading towards Oracle and having corporate clients, which is definitely a perspective from a serial entrepreneur, and that's with an S, not a C. I'm glad that joke hit. I'm glad. But okay, so and then also, Stephen, you talked about you provided the example of Neo Tokyo providing character lore for their community and how they can then publish that through the platform. So we've sort of, this is a multi-sided thing, and we've sort of obfuscated or skipped over the sort of individuals coming from Web 2 that have their own digital identity. They have a following base. We've talked a lot about sort of from a creative standpoint of it being like, lore building, building your own world, creative, Star Wars-esque, Lord of the Rings-esque, where it's like a whole character journey. As far as Kosmos goes, I understand that at the individual level, anyone that comes in becomes a user, that they can really pick their own creative journey. But as far as Kosmos goes and where your ideal customer profile is, are you guys leaning more towards story adventure type authors, or what's your take on like say a digital creative in the business development, personal development landscape coming in and producing a book of value that's not necessarily like a fun adventure read, but something that has like a merit to have a key getaway from, that you can learn something from? Where's that fall in the customer journey?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I mean, both fiction and nonfiction will very much be applicable, right, and possible on the platform. Since the whole goal is to have it fully customizable, that does mean that there's not any one inherent niche, whereas actually that's one issue / potential advantage that some of the other apps have, like they tend to have a niche following. Like Radish is basically romance, even though they have like 30 categories. You can publish anything you want on there, and there are different books of different genres there, but it's kind of the branding and everything has adopted the romance, but it's not fully customizable, right? So with us, it's not, we don't have to adopt one sort of genre like that. I think fiction is certainly where this all originated, right? And the inspiration and the other brand, Sitka World, is a fantasy that we'll be bringing as one of the flagship partners, right? And when Web3, there's a lot of sci-fi and fantasy and film and gaming groups that have that sort of storytelling they'll be bringing to it. So I'd say it's sort of in our go-to-market, that's where our focus more is, just because of how everything is aligned. But I definitely see long-term, if anything, more potential monetarily in the nonfiction, right? Because that's where a lot of people that are building businesses, business leaders, self-development, health, stuff like that, a lot of them have a lot of money that they're putting behind it, right? As opposed to the broke, wannabe fantasy author. Obviously, there are successful fantasy authors too. If we could get Brandon Sanderson on board, who is on our list of, dream clients, someone like that would obviously be very valuable as well. But with the nonfiction, obviously you may not have as much fun in terms of, oh, let's have really cool backgrounds and music and it's a magical world. It might be a little more cut and dry, but it's still customizable. It's still your brand, right? And that can be very valuable to just have your own colors and your own look and feel and fonts to it, right? Where it's your brand, and where you can still customize the monetization of that, right? So something like Substack is great and hugely amazing, right? Like a Substack is pretty much the closest alternative we were looking at if we weren't developing our own. And that's more focused on nonfiction than there are fiction authors, but it's still one business model. It's subscriber based, right? Well, what if you also could have stories that you charge $20, like an Amazon Kindle story to unlock, and also the gamification, having badges, and you could have exclusive content for people that have unlocked certain badges or gotten to certain levels. Like it's sort of like Substack on steroids. And I think there are a lot of nonfiction authors that would find use cases of that. But at the end of the day, like obviously we spend a lot of time thinking about, okay, what are different use cases and how can we paint the picture? But there's what we think will happen or should happen, what will happen, right? And I'm really curious myself to see like what will happen, because I'm sure there are people out there that will come up with creative use cases for this tech that we haven't thought of, in ways to layer together the different customizations to have some, whole new business models and industries that would use it that we may not have thought of. So I'm as keen as you will be to see how that unfolds and, see how our customers use it. And then we might pivot, kind of like, I think it's really called Twitch was like originally more of a TV streaming platform, right? And they rebranded and shifted just because of what they were seeing their customers doing. So I think it's important for something like this, that's sort of new technology. Like there's nothing groundbreaking in terms of like we're coding new types of AI, but it's new technology in terms of bringing together in pieces that haven't been brought together in that way before. It's really important for us to stay flexible and see what is doing best and what customers like best. And we could probably pivot our marketing to match that.
Yeah.
So
I call what you're making,
Thank you.
right? All the different pieces are there and you're just putting together a different way. I'm sorry,
Yeah.
did I step on you, Jacob?
No, I just said thank you. That was a really, really in-depth answer to my question.
So it seems to me that there's almost a little fork in the road you should look at. And one is, do you want a flagship site and brand like an Amazon or Smashwords is my favorite. They take 15% royalty. And when you go to Smashwords, you can download the book in any format you have, whether you have a Sony reader or a Kindle or do you want the flagship brand, or do you want to say this is a great tool, put it under the hood? So if you look at AI, there's going to be less and less sites like ChatGPT. And there's going to be more and more. Well, chat is already embedded in LinkedIn. It's already embedded in Microsoft. It's already embedded in Apple's Pages. We don't need a separate site. So I think it's a kind of a fork. And you really almost can't do both unless you got a lot of money, right? Because the deals are cut very differently. To go to an Oracle or to go to an Apple or say, look, we've got this tool, put it under your radar. Let's talk about money.
Yeah, I think to answer that question, I would say we have thought of the white label idea, right? I mean, complete white label where there's no like link to the Cosmos ecosystem per se. I think if we were to do the Oracle and stuff like that and like $10,000 a month, then absolutely that would be an option, and where it's like a private deployment of the tech stack and such. So I think that's an option, but in terms of our bread and butter, it is more the shared platform experience with customization. That makes sense.
Are you folks soliciting investment? Are you looking for other people to come in and write a check?
We are open to that. Yeah, we currently have an equity round that we've raised that's gotten us through this far. We are right now working with a consultancy firm to really revise the pitch and the offering and the marketing and all that. So we've been in discovery phase with them for a couple of weeks, and we'll be hashing out plans in the next couple of weeks. So I don't want to say too much because we don't know, nothing's been concrete, but we will be having probably a different offering in the near future. But currently, yeah, we're just an equity safe offering if anyone wants to get in at this early stage. So
anything you can share at all about what you're looking for or what you're selling or what they get or anything like that? Or is it better to wait until that other work is done?
Yeah, so I mean, currently what we've been raising at is a 5 million valuation, safe equity, and we've also been including a mint rev share on top of that. What we'd be looking at probably changing is we may, emphasis on may, be launching a token. And we'd probably have, a higher valuation for equity and a token option when we relaunch the offering.
Got it. And you also are talking about NFTs as well. You're adding that to the hopper as far as
correct. I mean, the NFTs would be, though, very much not so much for investors as the other options, right? They will be geared towards authors and creators on the platform, and the utility will actually be, the main utility will be basically discounted subscription access for the pro and premium levels. So instead of paying X amount per month, you'd be getting 1 year or even up to lifetime pre-bought at a discounted price. So we're looking at sort of the NFT as a subscription alternative model for that.
Right. I think Time Magazine was the first to say our magazines are going to be NFTs now. I think they came in first. Which to me is interesting because an NFT is interactive. Right? It's not you buy Time Magazine, you get it in the mail, you read it. I mean, I can communicate with you on an NFT level. So I see all of authoring going that way. And probably within our lifetime. I'm a lot older than you, so I've got a shorter window to see it happen in my lifetime. More questions from the group. I've done too much of the talking. I will do a few songs though, if we're at an impasse.
Anthony, did you have a question?
Unfortunately, I don't. I have to admit, I've been working on something that came up while I started this, and so that's what it's been lately, folks. I'm so sorry. Normally, Bill, I have to say you are clutch because to an extent, for a very long time, I was sort of exercising a light version of Bill Decker. And it's really funny because there's a lot to learn from Bill. I feel like he's like my next to my 3.0 or something. So I love listening in and I want to participate more. It's been super busy the last several weeks. So
I can second that. Anthony was the king of questions before Bill came in.
Yeah, so glad you're here, Anthony. Definitely stay on afterwards so we can, find out what's going on with you and catch up. Stephen, tell us, what is the future? Like, what are the next steps for Kosmos?
Yeah, so I would say the consulting company we're working with, right? That goal right now is to finalize that, right? Because we've had a lot of ideas and it's been like constant brainstorming, talking to people, piecing things together, but it was like we needed experts to come in who have launched. I mean, the people that are doing it, they're OGs, they've been in crypto since 2012. They've launched dozens of successful companies, right? So they're like, okay, we know what works, what doesn't. So they're helping us finalize that to make sure that we do things right the first time. I mean, there's always some learning by mistakes that will happen, but the main idea is, continue our raise, make sure that the business model and tokenomics and all of that is right, and continuing to onboard partners and authors, and then gearing up for MVP launch, which we're aiming for around happening next year. So probably around April or so of 2024 is what we're shooting for, to have a base structure. Obviously, knowing that it's not going to be all the bells and whistles, it's better to get something out there and iterate and improve rather than try to have it be perfect and everything there and then things break. So aiming to have something out there and some stories from our flagship partners and all ready, then it's just a matter of continually iterating and improving, right? So the more that we can prove the concept, bring more authors on, adding features, and doing that in tight relationship with our community, right? So just like that's to me really important with the Web3 ethos, the idea of less of a separation between company and consumer and between the creator or author and their fans, right? And instead of it all being about this third-party platform that just owns everything and just monetizes it with advertising and controls and censors everything, and you can never even get in touch with support or your fans. Like even on Amazon, you can sell a book digitally, but you don't get the email of the customer. Like that's ridiculous. So I'll let us say, yeah, as we build this, it's very important to us. We have our Discord, right? We have AMAs, and we always want to be hearing from people and hearing from our users and getting their feedback. And we're going to have a focus group for people that want to be testing it, before it's out and everything. So, yeah.
So I heard from you a few minutes ago, you talking about you had a $5 million valuation. Was that valuation done by a third party? And can you explain why you think, or they thought, you're at a 5 million valuation? And then the second part of the question is, what kind of, you said how much are you raising?
Yeah, so
5 million.
the target raise right now is 900,000,
Okay.
which should be enough for MVP and 18-month runway. Of that, we've raised 280,000 so far. But that number may go up based on discussions with our consultancy firm and all. So in terms of the 5 million valuation, I mean, that wasn't done by any like expert valuation company. It was just sort of based on what our advisors thought would be appropriate, right? I mean, we're at an early stage, didn't want to have a crazy, huge, aggressive valuation, right? It's still on basically the pre-seed round. We've been with angel investors and such. But we wanted to be able to raise enough money to really make this into the potential it can be. I mean, the market potential of this sort of thing is certainly large. I think larger than a lot of people realize. I mean, Wattpad has about 85 million monthly active users. Wattpad and Radish were each acquired for about $500 million recently, and Substack did a raise earlier this year at 800 million. And if you were to combine all the different online digital storytelling publishing platforms, it's easily hundreds of millions of users and billions of dollars. So our goal is to capture a sizable portion of that and define sort of a new standard for how to share stories online. We hope that there will be a lot of people trying to copy us, right, once it's too late. So
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for joining us. Do we have any other questions? Comments?
I just kind of more of a comment, because I imagine you and your wife are going to be using this yourselves as authors. So I liked the idea that you're going to see it on this business side, but also on the author side to see what works, what doesn't work, and you'll know how to adjust it because you guys are going to be a part of this, correct?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I'm definitely a believer that it's best when company founders are also customers, in the area that they're working in. And I'm a fairly avid reader. I mean, I say avid, that's a relative term. I know there's some people that read like 1,000 books a year. But I probably read about one book a week or so. And I really love, the storytelling. I mean, I grew up reading Lord of the Rings and just being mesmerized by all that sort of stuff, Harry Potter, stuff like that. So yeah, long story short, I'll definitely be using the app myself.
I actually went to school with Harry Potter's brother, Irving Potter. Very few people know who he is. That's supposed to be funny, guys. I mean, it's funny stuff here.
We smiled.
What did Irving sound like, Bill?
Yeah. Hi, I'm Irving Potter. How you doing?
Wrong audience.
From
All right. Well, Stephen, is there anything else that you would like to share before we wrap up?
I guess just encouraging everyone. One of the missions or really hearts behind this is the idea that everyone has a story to share, right? Even if you don't think you're an author, everyone has their own lived experience and their own lessons. And I just really encourage everyone to share those stories, right? Like sometimes, even if you think that you aren't a writer, like try writing a poem, or just think about a really crazy experience that happened to you once and write about it, and maybe publish it on Kosmos. I'm not trying to say that this just to get customers. I'm saying like really like the idea is bringing out the magic within you, right? And don't let other people hold you back or think, oh, it's not perfect enough or I'm not good enough or whatever, right? Like it's very cathartic too in writing and sharing stories. So
That's amazing message. It actually reminds me of Jacob's sweatshirt that he has on now. It's you are enough, which is fantastic to encourage people to get out there and share their stories. Where can people find you?
So our website is kosmosapp.com, and that's Cosmos with a K. To clarify, sometimes people are like, oh, you mean like, the Cosmos with a C, the token. No relation to that. So KOSMOS app.com. We also are on Twitter. I believe that's also Cosmos Stories on Twitter. And we do have a Discord. We have it a private Discord, but that doesn't mean people can't join. We just don't want all the random degens coming and saying when we're still, so far out from development. We really want the quality people that care about what we're doing, but we give updates in there and have, some fun times there talking about stories. So if anyone wants the Discord invite, I'm sure we could get it in the podcast, notes or attachments here, Crystal. So
Thank you. Thank you so much. You are a brilliant young man. We appreciate you coming on the show today and sharing your story and your journey with Cosmos. We appreciate you, everyone. We're going to sign off today. But before we sign off, Alan, would you mind saying a closing prayer? And then after closing prayer, everyone, please stay on just for about 5 or 6 minutes so that we can do some last comments and kind of get to know each other, which everybody knows each other off air. If you wouldn't mind. Thank you, Alan.
All right, let's bow our heads. Thank you so much. Heavenly gracious Father, Lord, thank you so much for another week of CryptoCannaVerse show. Thank you for our guest speaker today, Stephen with Kosmos, telling the story and sharing a story through crypto and blockchain is something that I think a lot of people will need to experience. We wanted to get together, Lord, and bless them. The reason why is you put the right people in place to help each other grow. Looking forward to this group that you put together with us. Continue to lead the way and continue to inspire each other, give us strength, and we continue to follow you and worship you. In Christ's name we pray. Amen.